Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Yesterday's price is not today's price. We are full off-season mode now. We've gone all the way past the 2023 season. So I guess you could say technically that last week's price is still this week's price.
We could, but that's our brand at this point, Todd. So we got to roll with it, man.
Yeah. So yesterday's price is not today's price. So I'm Todd Halverson. I'm joined by Brian O'Leary and Matt Davis. Today we are doing a consensus ADP review of the 2022, 2023, and 24 rookie classes. So Matt, Brian, and I have done our ranking, combining all of those classes, and we've averaged them out, and we have our consensus ADP, and we're going to blindly review them. For me, I think Brian took a quick peek, but for me and Matt, we're basically going to blindly review these and go one by one and see what our ranking is when you combine together the 22, 23, and 24 classes. And just one note before we start, this is how they are today. This is not how they were as prospects in 22 and 23. So this is how we would rank them today. Think of it as a cornerstone ranking for your dynasty teams from these last three classes. So Brian, you've already taken the quick peek, so we'll let you kind of lead us off. Who have we together ranked number one?
So this is a boring yet very exciting player in the sense of, there's not going to be much variation. I think everyone knows who's coming here. The guy that took the league by storm in this past draft class, CJ Stroud. All three of us had him ranked number one. So that's a boring but exciting player.
Yeah, it would be crazy if someone didn't have him ranked first. So
that's how
what's crazy to me is that a year ago, if you had told me, hey, there is absolutely no debate, you're going to take CJ Stroud over Caleb Williams in January of 2024, I would have been like, you're crazy. After the year that Caleb Williams had just had, he just won the Heisman. He looked, he was on a trajectory of being the best QB prospect of the last 20 years, which I still think he's up there. So don't get me wrong. I still think he's among the top 2 or 3, maybe the best of the last 20 years. But CJ Stroud was just like that good that it's a no-brainer. He's number one, and he's top 5 dynasty QB.
I was going to say, you're talking prospect with Caleb Williams, right? We saw CJ Stroud be an elite player in the NFL. So we think Caleb Williams probably will be, like, very good chance to be, but CJ Stroud is. So that's what it is right there.
It's also a good reminder not to get too up or down when it's like rookie draft season. It's like, oh man, my guy didn't make it to me. Like, I got sniped. It's like a lot of people were like annoyed that they were stuck with CJ Stroud at 106 last year. So
it's funny because it is like you're saying, Matt, there was like those couple tiers for the 23 class, and CJ Stroud was definitely like at the back end of it. It was like, am I taking Bryce Young or CJ Stroud? And now it's like, oh God, I hope you didn't take Bryce Young over CJ Stroud.
So let's go ahead and reveal players 2 and 3 because they are in the same tier. So Stroud was kind of in a tier by himself. And then our next 2 guys, Caleb Williams, who we've been talking about, Anthony Richardson. We do have Caleb Williams right ahead of Anthony Richardson. They're basically in the same tier.
Yeah, for me, I just gave Richardson the edge because, the little bit he showed was just outrageous. Like, 30 points a game or whatever it was he was averaging in the two games he played.
Yeah, and the game that he got injured, he had 2 touchdowns like in the first half too. So he was about to explode in that game too.
I still think that there's going to be a lot of people that are sitting on the 101 that are going to buy into all this hype of Marvin Harrison Jr., especially like after the combine and stuff. And you're going to see a lot of people sitting on the 101. Maybe they've already got a couple quarterbacks and they're just like foaming at the mouth for Marvin Harrison Jr. And you see some cheap trade backs from the 101 to the 102. I have a good example. One of my 101s, it is in a league with Brian. He has maybe one quarterback. Well, he has Bryce Young. He has no quarterbacks. And Justin Fields. So like I'm in a position where I'm a full tank. So like I probably just have to sit and just take another QB. Or do I just make a cheap trade back to 102 and then take Marvin Harrison Jr.? I think you're going to see a lot of those this offseason. And it may take you up to like the draft day to make those deals. But I just think in rookie drafts, it could be pretty cheap to move from the 102 to the 101, depending on the needs of what the person is at 101.
Yeah, I think everybody always says, draft talent, not for need. But it's harder to actually do that than it is to say it. Like to actually say, like you have a quarterback staring at you and you have a great wide receiver. You already have 2 or 3 good quarterbacks like you're talking about, Todd. And it's hard to be like, oh, like, why wouldn't I just take Marvin Harrison Jr.? Don't give anything, or, if I'm not going to get a nice little plus from me in that situation, why not just take the receiver that probably is a stud?
Well, and like we were just talking about with Stroud, like that saying operates under the assumption we actually know who the talented guys are. And the entire football community is not great at, identifying that all the time.
There's going to be a lot of broken brains if Marvin Harrison isn't good.
If I'm in a startup like last year, I think I mentioned this last week, I was kind of upset at the end of that first round. This year, if I'm at like the 110, 111 and you stick me with Anthony Richardson, I'm pretty excited because I'm going to come back around in the early second and I'm going to be able to get a stud receiver to go with him. And you've just started me off with 2 young, awesome pieces, probably guys that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. And so speaking of some of those guys in that next tier, let's just go ahead and do the whole tier here. And we've got these guys in order: Marvin Harrison Jr., Bijan Robinson, Garrett Wilson, Jahmyr Gibbs. We had these guys all ranked pretty similarly. I thought it was interesting that we had consensus of Marvin Harrison Jr. over Bijan. Brian, you had him behind Bijan. Is that just like a running back positional thing? Or I guess you've talked about how you're not moving down off of Bijan.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's like a lock take or anything like that, but like Bijan doesn't have the shitty coach anymore. I think he's going to trend back up in value and perception. I think he was a stud when he did get the ball. So it's one of those things that I don't know where Marvin Harrison lands. I don't know who his quarterback's going to be. Is his coach going to be a dickhead like Arthur Smith? I don't know. So like those are kind of things where I was thinking of the like that was my thought process for him and Gibbs ahead of Marvin Harrison.
I thought it was interesting that y'all were so much like I had Garrett Wilson as like the next guy, and I just thought it was interesting that y'all were a good bit lower on Garrett Wilson than me. Like Matt, you've got Marvin Harrison Jr. a few spots ahead of Garrett Wilson. Like to me, it's just difficult because like I hope that Marvin Harrison Jr. becomes like that Garrett Wilson. Like I think he will. I guess it's like the Garrett Wilson situation kind of sucks.
Yeah, I don't blame anyone for having Garrett above Harrison. I think that's maybe the more responsible thing to do right now. I just trust everybody that says Marvin is different. So I think he's that type of rare prospect that we can actually use the generational label instead of, just we kind of toss that around a little bit too much, but it seems deserved in his case. So I'm just kind of treating him like that right now.
And I want to make it clear, this tier of 4 is exactly how I viewed it in terms of a tier of 4. Those were all like 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. It wasn't 1, 2, 3, 4. So like they could easily I could see myself changing my mind in a month, honestly. Like those are interchangeable for me.
Yeah, like I agree with that completely. If I had Marvin ranked 4th on this list and I had Wilson ranked 6th on this list, and like I wouldn't even move like a very late second to make that swap. So they're pretty even for me.
All right, so just to like run through who we've had so far. So we started off with CJ Stroud in a tier by himself. Then we had Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson. And then the next tier down was Marvin Harrison Jr., Bijan Robinson, Garrett Wilson, and then Jahmyr Gibbs. And I did think it was interesting that we had Gibbs and Bijan so disconnected from Breece. So part of that, I think, was that Brian was just so much higher on Bijan and Gibbs, and then Matt and I were a little bit lower, so that like separated the tier a little bit. So Brees was that next guy in line, but like I just have a hard time understanding how they can be disconnected. Like they're 1 year apart. I would if I have to pick who's going to score more points in 2024, this upcoming season, I would pick Brees Hall. I mean,
Yeah, I'll let Brian explain like kind of what he views as a difference. To me, I had Bijan 7, Gibbs 8, Brees Hall 9, and I see absolutely no difference in the three guys. I'm happy to take either one of them. If I
What
have
I'm
one of the three
trying,
guys and I'm getting any kind of plus to make a swap, I'm doing that. Sorry, go ahead. Brian.
so just for those listening and watching, we're all looking at this list, the shared list, and revealing it like Todd mentioned. I see Todd and I both have a 5th ranked player. I don't see Matt having a 5th ranked player yet. So I'm really curious to see who that 5th ranked guy is. So that's that. I've been kind of daydreaming, trying to think of who that guy is.
yeah. So let's just go ahead and release it, and then we can kind of go back and update the list. So the next 2 guys off the board, we still have not made it to Matt's 5th ranked player. So we just went through, obviously, those top 3 quarterbacks: Marvin Harrison Jr., Bijan, Garrett Wilson, Gibbs, Brees. Matt and I kind of agree that Bijan, Gibbs, and Brees are all kind of a tier together. And then
So
you have
you
these
guys-
2 receivers that are kind of have been paired together for quite a while, and that's Olave and Puka. And they're the next 2 guys on our list.
Yeah, I kind of struggled with who to put first. I put Olave, and then I like after kind of turning the list in, I was like, nah, I probably want to do that. I would.
Do you not have 5?
So I just unveiled a lot of the list, and Matt just failed to put in a 5th ranked player.
That makes me wonder if I put 2 of the same number for someone else.
So we're going at it live right here, people.
Yeah, I guess I just missed the number 5.
All right, so let's talk Olave and Puka, because I was talking to my brother yesterday, and I'm actually having a hard time understanding why these guys are tiered together. Puka just outperformed him by a long shot.
Yeah.
Puka's peripherals much better. Puka in a better situation. He's going to score more points in 2024. Why are they tiered together? It doesn't even make sense. I mean, maybe that's just because Puka's underrated. I don't think Olave is necessarily overrated, though. So I think it's probably that Puka is underrated.
I think part of it's still like we talked about, like so many different people, like the name brand. Olave has that name brand pedigree that people are hanging on to, and he hasn't been bad, like you're saying. And there's definitely some Puka doubters. That being said, so I had Brees 8, Puka 9. That would be my personal tier, and then Olave would be the next tier. I wouldn't have him in the same tier for me personally.
I think with
But we
Olave
did.
and Puka, it's probably a too simplistic way of looking at it, and it's probably not even an accurate way of looking at it. But I think a lot of people just say Olave is in a horrendous situation. Puka's in a perfect situation for him. Awesome, like Stafford's been awesome this year. McVay compared to Dennis Allen is, about as wide of a chasm as there can be. So it's kind of maybe his situation will improve. And Olave is really awesome in real life. So
I saw. So you're talking about a bad situation and with the Saints. I saw a video this morning actually on Twitter somewhere. And it was this guy that looked like Carr walking down the street, and I assume Vegas. And a guy just pulled over. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing? You should be practicing. That's why we suck. You're walking to work right now. What are you doing?" Like, and it was just you made me think of it when you said it's a terrible situation. So I agree.
Man, Carr just had some rough moments this year from what I saw. But yeah, I mean,
Ian Hartitz tweeted that Chris Olave had the second most unrealized air yards. I think DeAndre Hopkins was number 1. So there are some talented players up on the list. It's not like Chris Olave blew everybody out of the water. So I'm not necessarily saying that there's a ton of regression coming for that, but he does have probably some balls that were sent away that could go the other direction next year, and you could see an improvement. But I think even if he improved on that, he's still not scoring as many points as Puka.
Well, Todd,
Right.
before we move on to the next tier, I saw that if I'm looking at it correctly, you have Olave 11 and Puka 12.
Yeah, I did that yesterday.
And you-
Do it today, I would flip those.
yeah, it's
So,
funny. I did the same exact thing. Like after I turned it in, I was like, wait, why did I put Olave above
it wouldn't
Puka?
really change anything with our grouping.
Yeah, they'd still be same tier.
They
Todd,
would be
Todd for
tied.
our listeners, unrealized air yards, is that Chris Olave's winning routes is open and then is just missed? Or
Yeah, basically. So
yep,
he's
yep.
running a post, and it's a 25-yard post, and the ball is at him at the 25-yard mark, and it's just not caught. Whether it's not caught due to him or it's not caught due to the pass, I'm going to assume majority of them are due to bad passes and bad throws. So
except the one that hit him in the face mask.
Except for the one that hit him in the face mask.
I was gonna say I remember him having a couple notable what the fuck moments throughout the year, and that's probably why Matt was like, why do people like Chris Olave still? And it was like you see those bad moments, but then you didn't realize he also had 120 yards earlier in the game, kind of thing.
The thing that actually made me find that unrealized air yard stat was the person had quote tweeted Ian Hartitz, and he said, "Time to start stuffing these nerds into lockers again. Unrealized air yards. How many unrealized bitches you got, pal?"
Oh, I did see that one. Yeah.
So that was how I actually found the Chris Olave unrealized air yards stat. But
I think I have one new person that we need to follow on the podcast.
yeah. So so the next two guys in that list were Chris Olave, Puka. I would take Puka over Chris Olave, but it's not like Chris Olave is moving down. It's just kind of I prefer Puka 1-1.
So why don't we run down? That's our top 11, right?
Yeah,
that's 10. Our top 10. So let's just run through the top 10. We got CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, Anthony Richardson. Those were the clear top 3. Those are all guys going in the first round of startups. And these next guys from down probably you could see going in the mid-second of startups at a lot of places. Now, some of them might go early, but I think a lot of times they could go mid to late. So then you've got Marvin Harrison Jr., Bijan, Garrett Wilson, Gibbs, then Breece Hall, Olave, and Puka. So that is our top 10 for the 22, 23, 24 classes. So coming in at 11, we had Drake May, who will probably be the consensus 103 or 104 of rookie classes, or of the 24 rookie class.
Yeah.
So Matt, last week you were crazy high on Drake May, and now I have Drake May 9th in this. So I guess I'm anchoring at the top end, and then Matt's the lowest on him. So Matt, what happened?
I mean, after the pod last week, we kind of talked about some of this is just guessing, and I was like, oh, I guessed wrong. He's not. People don't love him as much as I thought, because I thought he was more comparable to Caleb than at least from a real life perspective, especially because he runs a lot. So I don't have a strong opinion personally on Drake May. I'm just kind of trying to guess what the market is going to do with him. And to your point, it does seem like he's anywhere from 102 to 104. I don't think
rookie hype has cycles for sure. Rookie hype is cyclic for sure. The reason I ranked him where I ranked him was for that kind of protection. I could see him being 102 and he'll move up my board. If he was 104, he'd move back a little bit. Who he lands with, is it someone that they're telling us is going to go 2 and then goes 15, something crazy that we don't know about that scouts do or whatever? I don't know. So that's kind of where I was at with him and another quarterback in this class.
Okay, I was going to say, to me, our tier here makes sense because we have Drake May at 11, and there's 4 people in this tier. We have Sam Laporta, Jaden Daniels, and Trey McBride in this tier. And May and Jaden Daniels is kind of the one where I'm not really sure who to favor right now, and I think a lot of people are in that same boat.
Okay, so you guys are sitting on the clock at the 103, and you have the opportunity to get any of these guys for your 103 1 for 1. Chris Olave, Puka, Laporta. Are you trading the 103 for all three of those guys, 1-for-1? That was Puka, Olave, Laporta. And let's assume that it went Chalk, Caleb, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. So your option is Drake May or Jaden Daniels, and somebody's coming to you and they're offering you one of Puka, Olave, Laporta. So to continue filibustering here while y'all think about it, I had Drake May ahead of all those guys, but you guys had them ahead of Drake May.
Yeah, I think I would. So a lot of this kind of depends on my team build, I guess. Like, how badly do I need a quarterback? And I know you shouldn't draft for need, all that stuff, but like that's to me not always practical. But like if I have a good team and 2 quarterbacks and I'm set there, yeah, I'll trade the 103 for Puka or Olave. Sure, I think they're worth right around there. So I think that's about their value.
Again,
Malik Neighbors, I would, if he gets it like top 5, top 10 draft capital, which I think is definitely possible. If he gets a good landing spot, he will go up my board as well. I think he's a stud in the making.
Okay, so where would he compare to like Puka, Olave?
I guess he'd be behind them. So I guess I would say I would trade 103, I guess, for those guys. But
if Neighbors goes top 10 to the Chargers,
if Neighbors goes in the top 10, he's probably maybe 103 for me.
Ooh,
yeah, he's good.
I mean, this class is absolutely stacked at the top 5, and then if you want to argue Brock Bowers, the 106, like this class is crazy 1 through 5, and I'm kind of down on it from there, and that's debatable. But like 1 through 5, this class is like wild.
So for me, it's 1 through 7, actually. Like, I mean, just Bowers and Odunze, I think, are no doubters. Like, at least as prospects, I think they're awesome. So to me, there's a clear top 7 right now. Like, there ended up being a clear top 6 last year. That's how I view it right now. But
yeah, I do agree. There's a clear top 6 and 7. But like, all right, let's just take Malik Neighbors. We were just talking about him. If Malik Neighbors was in that 2022 class with Garrett Wilson, London, Breece Hall, he's right there with Breece Hall up for the 101 because he would be a clear better prospect than Garrett Wilson and London. And
I don't agree with that, but I also didn't agree with any of the Garrett Wilson stuff coming out. I thought he was the clear-cut best prospect in that class.
Well, we're talking about Malik Neighbors going 5 to the Chargers versus 10 to the Jets, or where did London go? 7 to the or 8 to the Falcons. So yeah. Like, and there's a difference in the production that we've seen. So he would probably be the clear-cut 102. And I don't think Brock Bowers is like a 102 type of prospect.
I think I saw Neighbors this past season had the second highest PFF grade since 2019 or something like that for a receiver, behind only Devontae Smith, who had like one of the, if not the best college receiving season as ever. So definitely like what Todd's saying, if he gets the draft capital, he's an early declare. He's a stud. Wheels up.
All right, so that tier, Matt mentioned it. It has Drake May, Laporta, Jaden Daniels, and Trey McBride. And that sends us through 14 players. So 15th player right after Trey McBride. So basically our tight end 3 of this group is Brock Bowers, who we just mentioned. And we actually have him and Malik Neighbors tied. So based on the conversations we've been having on Malik Neighbors, Brian, you are the highest on him, but you did have Neighbors after Bowers. But I guess you're probably not assuming like 5th to the Chargers in this exercise.
Yeah, exactly. That's like Neighbors could move 2, 3, 4 spots up for me for sure. I think a lot of those are close together. I think Bowers in a tight end premium situation, he is one of the best college tight ends that's ever existed. So
where are we on Bowers in the overall tight end ranking? Like, let's just kind of assume average landing spot. He goes like 10th-ish, 12th-ish, something like that. So really good draft capital. He's after Laporta for us. He's after McBride. In the overall, not just in these 3 classes, overall tight end ranking, where is he like Andrews, Hawkinson, where is he compared to some of these other guys?
For me, he's tight end 3.
I would say 5th. I would say behind Andrews and Hawkinson, but he could obviously
Even with the ACL, Hawkinson's up there.
Yeah,
that's fair.
But I mean, it's something we've all three of us, I think, have talked at pretty decent length that we're not huge Hawkinson guys, but it was a volume, and he's done enough to over and over again to say that he's this good.
But if Bowers went to a situation like Hawkinson,
who's also not off a serious injury, but he's coming off an injury. He was playing hobbled half the season this year, so see how he responds as well.
Yeah, I mean, in some formats, Hawkinson was tied in 1 this year, so like in full PPR tied in premium, so like he was tied in 1, like basically tied with somebody. But like Hawkinson is in like a situation with all the volume with O'Connell. Like if Bowers got that type of situation, I'd move Bowers ahead of Hawkinson.
I'll say there's almost no situation that will scare me with Bowers. If he lands with a bad QB, whatever, that sucks. Hopefully it changes, but like, I can't see Baltimore trading up and drafting him or something like that. Like there's just no situation. I'll be like, oh, that's a shitty situation. Like,
but you're also like, then you're just forgetting what happened with Kyle Pitts, like the up and downness, and like Njoku, for example, people loved coming out. There's been like a lot of like athletic, hyped up tight ends. I mean, Bowers, I'm not doubting Bowers. I'm not, but because he has a track record, but it's not always a sure thing with tight ends. Just like we talk about quarterback volatility, not knowing what's going on.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fair. I just, I don't, maybe that's like something I should look into more. I just don't care that much about situation with tight ends. Like that was one of the reasons I didn't care that much about Dalton Kincaid. I thought that was kind of a little overhyped. I just don't care that much about the situation. Maybe that's,
but we see like what it did for Laporta. If Laporta he was not a landing spot proof player. He went to a really good offense with a team that wanted to involve him, saw his skill sets. So like, that's what I mean. I guess like, he can go out there with no makeup, but if they put some makeup on, he might win some more awards, sort of thing.
Yeah, fair.
All right. So right after Bowers and Neighbors, and this is still on the same tier. This is kind of a large tier for us. I'll just list out the whole tier, and then we can talk about any of these guys that we want. So this tier had Bowers and Neighbors, Devon Achane, Brock Purdy, Tank Dell, and then we get to Drake London. So this is player 15 through 20.
Yep.
Bowers, Neighbors, Achane, Purdy, Dell, and London. I thought it was interesting that we had Neighbors all 3 of us, I think, ahead of Tank Dell. And then also ahead of London. So we are pretty bullish there. I think, Matt, you were the lowest on Achane.
Yeah, that's going to be a theme with a lot of these I'm lower on all these running backs than you guys. I just don't want to build my team around high value running backs. So I'm always going to choose the elite young receiver over the elite young running back.
One thing to me, I think, and I'm just kind of like thinking through this exercise, why do we have such an extreme gap between like Gibbs and Achane? Like how different really are they? Especially next year when you've got to assume either Mostert is either not there or he takes a step back and Achane takes a step forward. Like what?
So I think with Achane, it's just his build, his size, questions about his workload. He got hurt. He got hurt several times this year. That's it, really.
I mean, we could very well sit here a year from now and be like, yeah, Gibbs has some injuries and Achane's not injury prone. Like it just, I feel like
but Achane's like historically small for the position. Like Gibbs is
Todd,
not big.
Todd, you're saying like, what is the gap? And I think it's a valid question, at least to think about. If you have Jahmyr Gibbs, what are you needing on top of Achane to move him?
I mean, if I have Gibbs, which I don't, so this is probably not a fair person to be. Yeah. I mean, Gibbs and anything I can get on top of
Anything.
Achane
Okay.
is a win. When I say anything, like obviously like the 309 isn't like moving the needle because there's
So I'll
such
give
a
like
gap. Like somewhere in the second is something I'm going to be
okay.
trying. I
So
would be trying to
it's not
do.
like it's not like a Dontavion Wicks. You're welcome at it. That's the Quick Packers reference.
I
As a
do
plus.
like Dontavian Wicks, but yeah, I mean,
Maybe that's why I had a 5.
maybe somebody a little bit better, but yeah, I mean, something on top. I mean, I don't think that there's probably that much of a difference between the two. And if I can build out some depth, let's say I'm a contender and I could do a 2 for 2 and get a really old guy. Let's say I trade away Jahmyr Gibbs and like a second, and I get Achane and a Keenan Allen or
I was just saying Amari
an
Cooper.
Amari Cooper. Yeah, Amari Cooper, one of those guys. So I get some sort of little bit of a boost. I do acknowledge that Gibbs has a major market value advantage over Achane. So like there's more people in my league that will be like, I really want Gibbs, than will be like, I really want Achane, and I have more trading opportunities. But if I had Gibbs, I mean, really any of those three, Bijan, Gibbs, Brees, and I've got some Bijan, I probably should go and like at least pulse it and see what I can do.
Also this is just a strictly an offseason thing that I do personally. I don't want to trade for either running back that's playing in the playoffs right now. Like something can change their value pretty drastically, pretty quickly. Hopefully not, but it could happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like the only other thing is that last thing I'd say about it is kind of to what I was saying about how I consistently have a lot of these running backs a little bit lower than you guys. I don't trust the volatility of the position. I think it's hard to predict. So yeah, it would not shock me at all if 12 months from now we're talking about Achane RB1 overall in Dynasty. Like who knows?
Yeah, I have one more thing within this tier, Brock Purdy. Matt and I have gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I have him ranked 19. Matt has him ranked 22. So I just wanted to make that. I want to make that clear that he paints me as this Purdy hater, this love hater, and in reality, I'm higher than him than he is. I'm higher on Purdy than Matt is currently in this group.
Within this tier, but you got to remember, I am missing a 5, so I only had 2 spots lower than you, actually. I think, but yeah,
sure,
fair point.
Still higher.
So I think basically the consensus here is that Matt is much higher on receivers, and then a little bit lower on quarterback and running back. I'm probably
I would not say lower on quarterback. It's just maybe
you're lower on Purdy and you're lower on Drake May, and those are the only like 2 real quarterbacks that were outside of those top 3. So there's 2, and it's a 2 for 2.
I mean, Jaden Daniels and all right. I mean, maybe, but I would say I don't look at it.
He's not saying
way.
you're lower on quarterbacks.
That's more
you're not lower on quarterbacks in general, Matt. With this group, it seems like just how it played out with the rankings. Like you have 10, 11 guys.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, with this group, I mean, part of it is there's a lot of really good young receivers in this group. So, but yeah.
So why don't we? So we've gone through 20. Why don't we recap the 20 again here? Just so we're kind of all staying on the same page. Say where we're right, where we're wrong. We have Stroud at 1, Caleb Williams, Anthony Richardson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Bijan, Garrett Wilson, Gibbs, Hall, Olave, Puka at 10, Drake May, Sam Laporta, Jaden Daniels, Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, Malik Neighbors, Achane, Purdy, Dell, London. That's our top 20.
And when you get through the top 20, you could kind of, as you're thinking about like rookie picks, those top 20 basically are your 1 through 6 of 2024 picks. So like if you're thinking, I really don't want a tight end. I expect Bowers to be there at 6. Who could I trade for and still get a young guy like at receiver? The guys that we kind of have in that tier would be Tank Dell, London. Let's say that you're in need of a quarterback and you're sitting on like the 106 or the 107. We're kind of saying Brock Purdy. Does that like line up with your thinking on like Brock Purdy, for example?
Yeah, I think so.
I think if I was sitting on the 107 and I needed a quarterback, I'd be okay with it. At the 106, it's a little tougher to pull that trigger. Yeah, but
I would like, assuming draft capital, I'd rather have Daniels as like a reroll than Purdy, for example, for quarterback.
Yeah, I'm assuming Daniels is long gone at that point, but yeah,
sure.
So for me, this is where the teardrop just like really falls apart, and it does for us overall. But based on the way the rankings look, it's more so for me with the next guy on the list, and that's Rome Odunze. And I am just much lower on him probably than the whole market, and definitely versus you guys. And, Matt and I have him 10 spots apart. Matt has him at 18 and I've got him at 28. So we are like on two different planets in this exercise on Odunze.
It's Odunze, right?
Odunze.
Just wanted to make I barely know.
Rome Odunze. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't have a lot to say other than he looks awesome every time I see him play. I thought he was probably the best player on the field against Michigan. So
what did he do on the field that made you think he was the best player on the field? I mean, he got like
got wide open constantly against what's considered.
There were two broken plays where they were just like the Michigan defenders were just kind of like lost track of people. I don't know if like.
I mean, the Michigan cornerback. The Michigan cornerback's considered the cornerback one of the 2025 draft class. He's considered like an elite level cornerback prospect. I thought Rome played awesome against him. Whenever I've seen Washington this year, he stands out to me as he pops off the screen to me. That's what I'll say. So
I saw someone compare him to Chris Olave in terms of style, and he's bigger. I didn't watch the national championship game, so I'm not going to comment on that. Michigan's cornerback is a stud. So anything that he would have gotten probably would have been earned, I would think. But that's just what one person I saw on Twitter compare him to bigger Chris Olave.
So our friend Dynasty Zoltan said that Odunze runs the best sluggo route since Odell Beckham Jr. And I don't know
like
about
out and up is Sluggo out and up basically.
Yeah. And I mean, I see that he's a really fluid mover on the field. I think that those type of traits really translate at the next level. I don't see almost anything to knock on Odunze as a prospect. I think a lot of other years he would be in the running for wide receiver one in the draft class. It's just, this is a really good class.
Matt, do you remember in our group chat when I brought up him as being a potential wide receiver 2 and everyone jumped down my throat? And then I've obviously since then.
I don't remember that, but that sounds like the group chat where like we are quick to tear someone's opinion and then 2 months later be like, actually, I kind of agree with that. So go ahead.
So I'll be doing my like player comps, and I kind of look at receivers from more of an analytical lens because I'm not going to go through and like watch every single one of these players, every game, every snap. So I am down a little bit on his like analytical side. I do think the one concern that I have with Odunze is every year, basically, and there's a lot of times it's more than one time every year, we have like this one guy that everybody in the fantasy community thinks is going to be like a first round pick. It's going to be a superstar. And then they just fall down to the draft. And a lot of times it ends up happening because of the combine. And I think that's pretty agreed upon that he won't run a great 40. And I'm not saying that that's important, but the NFL puts an importance on it. So like for me personally, like I'm not worried about like his speed. He looks fine. But the NFL will say, oh, if he ran a 4.62, they may drop him down in the draft. And if he goes in like the 3rd, 4th round, then I think it becomes a concern. But as we sit today, we can't like say that. Like Matt, you're making a face, but like every year we see guys that fall like that. Like It just happens. Like,
he ran a sub
I mean,
4
fourth round, like unless he
or
commits a
4
felony.
last year
yes,
unofficially.
but every year there's a guy that like we all think is awesome and the NFL doesn't think is awesome. And like we can still draft him. There's been Amon-Ra St. Brown. We thought he was awesome. The NFL didn't, and he's still awesome. But there's also guys that we think are awesome. The NFL doesn't. They fall into the draft and then they aren't good.
So Todd, if he
David
goes top 20.
Oh yeah, then he's obviously awesome. I'm not saying he's not.
Okay.
I'm just saying like he is the type of player, bigger body, probably not that fast, but maybe he is, and he could. So like if I was drafting pre-NFL draft, he would be somebody that I would be a little bit hesitant on until we get more of these like mock draft databases where those tend to be more right. Not right. That's probably not the right word. A little bit more accurate in the last few years. But there is a guy every year. There'll be a guy that will just crater, and us fantasy people think he's good, and he ends up not being good.
Yeah, if Odunze falls to round 3, none of my ranking matters. Like, yeah, I would drop that guy significantly. I'm just, I'm assuming mid first draft capital, and maybe
that's what I am too with my ranking. And that's all we can go on right now. I'm more just talking about like if you were to be in a rookie draft, pre-NFL draft, and I was sitting at the 107. Yeah, I guess he's the consensus 107 pick, but I would have a lot of apprehension hitting that selection. I think I'd be shopping that 107 and see if there's, here's some other guys on that board. So let's just kind of go through that. Let's just go through that tier. And that next tier is Rome Odunze, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Dalton Kincaid, Kyron Williams, Rashee Rice, Zay Flowers, and Jordan Addison. So that was Odunze, JSN, Kincaid, Kyron Williams, Rashee Rice, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. If I was sitting on the 107 right now and like gun to my head, I'm taking any of those guys in that tier over him. Although I don't besides Addison, I would, but I like from a market value standpoint, I could probably get something on top of it just because people do love Odunze and they don't like a lot of these guys we just mentioned.
Yeah, I zero chance I would trade him for JSN after JSN's rookie year. But JSN, I'm clearly much lower than you guys. It looks like Brian has JSN 21. You have him 22. Todd, I have him 28. So we agreed on him as a prospect. I think I'm just a lot more down on his rookie year than you guys.
This is a interesting group for sure.
It is.
It's dominated by it's a lot of 2023. The receivers that have kind of given us a lot of good and maybe some bad or question marks. So it's kind of like all of these guys could probably be stars or they could all kind of fizzle out. That's how I see it at this point.
And I think it's almost perfect that Kyron Williams is in this group because all these guys have reasons to really like them and maybe some question marks that are keeping them from like the tier above them that maybe they're not quite as sure things. And, with Kyron, it's obviously the draft capital and the fact that he didn't do anything
just for explanation, I don't know if this is good process or not, but the reason I have Kyron Williams lower than you, Todd has 21, you had 23, Matt, I had 29, is I'm not doubting that he's good at this point, but I'm doubting I've already kind of missed the boat in that sense that I don't want to pay because he was great this past year.
Yeah. So this group is basically like if you're thinking about rookie picks is essentially like around like the 108 to the 112 ish. Matt, you have not to beat Odunze to death, but like let's more talk about the other guys that were in the tier ahead. You had Odunze ahead of Tank Dell and Drake London.
I was surprised about that.
Yeah. I mean,
you just are that high on Odunze or like are Tank Dell and London?
I'm that high on Odunze. I think Dell and London are awesome. I think Odunze has real superstar potential, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm definitely
I'm just big on one receiver every year in rookie classes, so I'm not going to say that it's definitive for sure with the Odunze, but
I just really like him.
Like,
I mean,
he could be 6'1", he could be 6'3", he could be at 200 pounds, he could be 220, he could run a sub 4.4, he might run a 4.6, like Todd's saying. Like everything I've seen is 6'3", 215, sub 440, sub 4.440. But that was Treylon Burks too, and then Treylon Burks ran whatever he ran, a 4.5 or something. Unofficials can sometimes get weird.
So in this 108, if you've got like picks in the 108 to the 112, I'm going to run through these guys again. Would you be comfortable trading one for one? Like you're sitting on the clock. And this is, of course, just like as we are today. That's all we have to go on. Like we just have to assume what we know today on January 10th. So you're sitting on the clock at the 110. Are you trading away the 110 for JSN, Kincaid, Kyron, Rashee Rice, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, any of those guys? Or
I'm not right. I'm not right now, and I know that's kind of not the point of what you're saying. You're asking us to value it right now, but like more information will come along during this process that maybe Troy Franklin moves up a lot. You know, maybe Xavier Worthy, maybe a couple of these other guys. So I just would not trade a first round pick right now for one of these guys in this tier where I think it's pretty similar value. I would have to be getting a great value.
For example, what if Troy Franklin goes to the Packers? Then it's 101.
Yeah,
102,
right. Then I mean, I'll never talk about Odunze again. It'll just be the Troy Franklin show. So you got to see where the landing spots end up.
And I'm going to go ahead and stamp my Troy Franklin ahead of Odunze. That'll be my.
I'm fine with that, man.
Not today. I won't do that today.
He's good.
But
He's
I
good.
think at the end of this, I think I'll have Franklin ahead of Odunze.
And like Brian knows this, the guy that I really, we'll talk about him later. Xavier Worthy is that guy for me. I just based on the eye test, I think he looks awesome. And then trying to read smarter draft and Devy people than myself, it's like, oh man, a lot of people do not like this guy that much. I need to definitely cool my jets with him. So a lot of stuff is going to come to light in the next couple months that I think is going to adjust how we rank a lot of these guys.
Okay, so these are basically, we've kind of said this is like going through the 112. Let's go ahead and mention the next guy on the list because I think he kind of fits into that last group. But for whatever reason, our average didn't have him there. So Ken Walker is the next guy on the list. Would you trade 111, 112 for Ken Walker?
I would. Definitely, like, especially like, again, you're not filling out starting lineups right now, but I would pay that because I think Kenneth Walker he's pretty good. And that gets me like, I think I'm going to probably end up getting more Kenneth Walker than I probably expected or anticipated as an example, as Matt's like just freaking out over there.
No. That wasn't my reaction. I have Ken Walker the lowest of us easily, but I'm fine trading the 111 or 112 for him if you need a running back, or if you just think he's a better value. I'm fine with that. I just I don't love Walker. I don't ever see any kind of elite ceiling. I think he's fine. I think he's going to produce RB2 numbers going forward, maybe low end RB1.
I think this class could be real. This 24 class could be really fun if they get like, I don't know, like 10 or 15 guys that get, worthy draft capital in the real draft. Like this could be pretty fun, I think. Because running backs are weird.
Yeah, like we don't even have any running backs from the 24 class to this point, and I don't even think we have any in the entire ranking. And it's just because like we don't know yet. I mean, Travion Henderson sounds like he's going to declare. We got Jonathan Brooks from Texas. Yeah. He declared. People seem pretty high on him.
But he just got hurt too, right?
Yeah, he got hurt in the middle of the year. I think he should be okay. But then you've got Benson from Florida State. It's just it's a mess at running back for this class. So if you were in a dire state and needed a running back, you're a contender, and you moved your 112 for Ken Walker, I don't think that's a bad deal. Now, I don't think that you can probably make that trade, but
Braylon Allen, somebody will freak out about him if he gets drafted semi-high. That's another guy out of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So that was through 28 players when we got down to Ken Walker. And from here, it's kind of a mixed bag of guys that I would say are like more worth like mid-seconds besides a couple. And I don't really understand what happened in our ranking here. So I'm going to call them out. The first one, and these are just guys that were really disconnected. So we got through 28 players. The first guy I want to call out is George Pickens. So I have George Pickens basically in that tier that we just mentioned, along with like Rashee Rice, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. You guys are basically out on him. I think he did some good things this year. I think his peripherals are nice. His situation is awful, and he's still producing. Now, granted, his numbers kind of look better due to that monster game against the Bengals on a Thursday night or whenever, or a Saturday night, whenever it was that we all saw. But like, I think y'all are low on Pickens. Like I've never liked Pickens, but like here I am. I don't even know what to say about him because I've always been like, nah, Pickens sucks. But here I am trying to back him up.
I view this as I view this whole group of guys as back end one guys. So that's kind of I just threw him at the end of the back end ones.
Okay.
So I don't know like you're
maybe
viewing like a 4 or 5 or 6 guys above is where the 111, 112. I was viewing this all as like kind of 110, 111, 112.
That's fair. So like the guys that you were mentioning, like Odunze, JSN, Kincaid, Kyron Williams, Rashee Rice, Zay Flowers, Addison, and Ken Walker are probably more like values between like 107 and like 110. And then this next list, Brian, you can hit them. Like the next list would be like 111, 112-ish.
For me, that's kind of how I viewed it. So that'd be,
Right, so,
we have Jaden Reed, Will Levis, Troy Franklin, who's the 24 guy, George Pickens, Xavier Worthy, Tajay Spears, Bryce Young. So there's like a lot of assumptions with this group, I think, in general.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I was kind of viewing it. Like Will Levis, new coach, showed talent. Trey Franklin, see where he gets drafted, how high he gets drafted. Pickens, what's their quarterback situation like? Are they going to bring in another guy? Are they going to trade him because he's a dickhead? I don't know. Xavier Worthy, total wild card in my opinion. Tajay Spears, are they going to bring somebody else in and disrupt that, or is he going to have a free reign? And then Bryce Young, does he not suck anymore?
So the one interesting thing about Pickens that I did read this year is supposedly his separation, like metrics and stuff like that, improved a ton from his rookie year. Like he got a lot better at getting open, which, I think could lead to more reason to have him closer to where you have him, Todd. I just they're already talking about Russell Wilson might be there next year. I don't expect them to improve their quarterback situation whatsoever.
Man, that would be wild.
And I'm kind of.
I mean, that'd be a nice upgrade. I mean, I don't like Russell Wilson as much as the next guy, but Russell Wilson would be a nice upgrade over Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett.
Yeah. It just, to me, like it feels like it feels like a Steelers move. So yeah.
All right, so you're mentioning like the open rate, that sort of thing. George Pickens, ESPN RTM. They have a model. Just Google ESPN RTM, and it'll pop up there. George Pickens was the 6th overall wide receiver for this model for 2023. So like Ayuk, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb were the top 3. Obviously, like injuries played a little bit of a part for like our typical guys like Jefferson and Chase. So you had some of that built in. I am gonna throw out there that Dontavian Wicks is high on this list too. So
wait,
our Packers.
I'll even let the Wicks thing slide because they have Pickens above Amon-Ra St. Brown.
So it's a model that uses open rate, catch rate, and yak.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily say it ranks them based on how good you are or how it's not. I wouldn't say it's predictive. I would say it tells us what they did this past year. So like if you went up against a shitty corner and you got open on him, obviously like that's going to bode well in your favor.
Okay.
And one thing with Pickens the past 2 years is his catch rate has been insane because like the model will like Next Gen Stats has the stat that shows like what were the odds of catching that pass.
Yeah.
Pickens is catching some balls that like are very low odds to catch. So like he is bumped up for that too. I think that he's probably underrated in the community, like overall in like the macro market. But from a view of like the person that has Pickens, I don't think that they're selling at some of these prices that like you might see on like Keep Trade Cut. I don't know what he is on Fantasy Calc, but I'm going to guess that there's a big gap between those two, between Fantasy Calc and Keep Trade Cut.
Yeah, I mean, you convinced me to take a closer
either,
look.
so like,
you convinced me to take a closer look at Pickens, I think.
I think I convinced myself too. I mean, I don't have any George Pickens, but
we're all gonna
people do seem probably too low on him. I mean, he's wide receiver 31 on Fantasy Calc, Real Trades, Real Leagues. Guys ahead of him: Keenan Allen, Jaden Reed, Mike Evans. Like Jordan Addison just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what do people like about him?
Hey man, he makes big plays. Like if you're
just like
no, Pickens does too. I'm just saying, like, I think they're kind of similar in that boat actually, where there's could be some questions about some efficiency or whatnot, but I think a lot of that's what it is with Addison, like the first round draft capital, and then they'll be playing an island game and he'll make a 75-yard touchdown catch where everybody's watching that game. So I think there's a lot of that going on with Addison. I know that's personally why I still kind of like Addison, is like I kind of see it with him. But I also have no idea what that team is going to look like next year, or who's going to be quarterbacking it, or what. So I don't know.
Just switching to Pickens, I think he's a good guy that you could approach someone with like early to mid 2 and like a 25-2 and probably get him. So that's something that I'm probably going to target, even with maybe I'm low on him or not. But I think you find enough people that probably would move him for that, especially like once rookie fever really hits.
That's the nice thing about being in like more leagues, is that in your one league, 2 leagues, yeah, probably George Pickens is owned by the guy that loves George Pickens. But if you've got double-digit leagues, you might be able to find the one guy that just happens to have George Pickens on accident, and that would be the guy that you might be able to get that trade done of like, what'd you say, an early second and like a 25 second?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a fair offer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an actionable deal. So
like you've got a rebuild team. You got the 202. We've all got major tank teams that maybe want to try to contend next year, even if they're just trying to tank another year, which I mean, maybe not like the best process, but if that's how the chips fell, getting George Pickens for that price, if you've got a load of picks, I think you can do worse things with your picks than.
And just on this topic, I love when you're tanking. Like the year that just happened, and everyone thinks that your team's still going to suck, but you have assets to make that team not suck and have them treat your 25-2 as 201 or 202, and then all of a sudden it becomes 210, 211, 212. That's something that is very much a doable thing in most leagues. So that's just something to investigate.
All right, so let's kind of run through the list one more time. We got the 3 quarterbacks up top. Got a really fun group that are like, I guess, early second-round startup players with Marvin Harrison Jr., Bijan, Garrett Wilson, and Gibbs. One note, we're going to be posting all of our individual rankings. Brian, what are we going to do? Like post them to Twitter? We'll post them into the feed of the podcast?
Yeah, we'll put it in with the same within the replies of the posting of this new episode.
Okay, so you'll be able to see our ranking there for this that we've done, so you can follow along. But after that tier, we've got Breece Hall, Chris Olave, and Puka kind of clumped together. And then Drake May, Sam Laporta, Jaden Daniels, McBride. You can kind of think of those as like the 103, 104 grouping. And then the next grouping, you've got Brock Bowers, Neighbors, Achane, Purdy, Tank Dell, London. I would call that your 105 to 16, maybe 107 type value players. And then from there, we have a significant tier break, beginning with Odunze, besides Matt, JSN, Kincaid, Kyron Williams, Rasheed Rice, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. These players being worth like 107 to 109 or 110. Include Ken Walker in that group, I would say. And then from there, you've got guys that are worth probably like around the 110, 111, 112. And that's Jaden Reed, Will Levis, Troy Franklin, George Pickens, Xavier Worthy, Tyjae Spears, and Bryce Young. Whew. So that's 35 players that we just listed, that are worth around a first-round pick in 2024.
And then, I mean, there's more potentially for 2024 class, especially. Like, there's one guy that I'm a big fan of, receiver Brian Thomas out of LSU. He's kind of forgotten after Malik Neighbors kind of took the world by storm. That's one guy to keep an eye out for if he gets draft capital.
Yeah, there's going to be guys that come storming up. Like we mentioned earlier, we didn't list any 2024 running backs. I don't think you really can. We haven't had Henderson declare, for one. Like, it's tough to really say who's going to be in there, but there will be a couple of them that probably jump in, whether they're second round NFL or even third round NFL picks. All right, so we're going to keep coming back once a week here in the off season. Once we get more declares and we're able to get some more data on some of these guys, each year I do the comps. So I'll probably do like some like bonus pods of like looking at some of those comps for wide receivers primarily. So we'll do stuff like that. Hit us up in the comments of anything you'd like to see. That would be helpful. But we're going to try to keep coming back once a week, Brian.
Yeah, and Todd, you're doing some type of audit of your teams. I know that will be some type of content. I'm doing 12 teams as an audit and kind of going down the trades that I made, et cetera, et cetera. So that'll be some upcoming extra content.
Yeah, so I've got 13. I'm in 13 Dynasty leagues. I'm going to basically go through each of them, have like an open hashtag transparency of like how those teams finished, because I know everybody's posting that type of stuff and it's hard to know what's what and what's real and not. So I'm just going to open up the books and let people take a look if they want. So we'll wrap it up here. We'll be back again next week. For Brian, he is at Brian_O'Leary1. Matt is at Dynasty Peasant. I am Todd at Dynasty SFlex. Thanks for joining Dynasty Market Watch podcast. We are out.
Jaylen Brown was fouled.